The phone rang at 2 in the morning and Maya knew immediately that something was wrong. Nobody calls at that hour with good news. Her heart was already racing before she even picked up. "Maya, you need to come to St. Catherine's Hospital right now." Her mother's voice was shaking, barely holding together. "It's Ethan, there's been an accident." Maya sat up in bed, her mind trying to catch up. Ethan, her sister Caroline's fiancé. The man Caroline had been planning to marry in 3 months. "What happened? Is he okay?" "Where's Caroline?" "Just come, please, we need you here." The drive to the hospital felt like it took forever and no time at all. Maya's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. She kept thinking about the last time she'd seen Ethan, just 2 weeks ago at a family dinner. He'd been quiet that night, she remembered. Caroline had been on her phone most of the evening, barely paying attention to anyone. The hospital's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and cold. Maya found her parents in the waiting room on the 4th floor. Her mother's eyes were red from crying. Her father just looked lost, staring at nothing. "Where's Caroline?" Maya asked again. Her mother handed her a phone. On the screen was a text message from Caroline sent an hour ago. "I can't do this. I'm sorry. I need to leave. Don't try to find me." Maya read it 3 times, trying to make sense of the words. "She left?" "What do you mean she left? Her fiancé is in the hospital and she just left? She's gone, Maya." Her father's voice was flat, emotionless. "Packed a bag and took off. Won't answer our calls." Before Maya could process this, a nurse approached them. "The family of Ethan Chen?" They all stood up. The nurse led them down a long hallway to a private room. Through the window, Maya could see machines, tubes, monitors showing numbers and lines she didn't understand, and in the middle of it all, Ethan. He looked so still, so unlike the person she knew. His face was bruised, bandaged. He looked smaller somehow, more fragile than she'd ever seen him. "He's in a coma," the doctor explained, his voice gentle but direct. "The car accident caused severe trauma. We've done what we can, but now we wait. The next 72 hours are critical." Maya felt like the floor was tilting under her feet. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people she knew. They happened in movies, in other people's stories. An older woman was sitting beside Ethan's bed holding his hand. She looked up when they entered, her eyes sharp despite the tears on her face. This had to be Eleanor Chen, Ethan's grandmother. Maya had heard about her but never met her. Caroline had mentioned her a few times, always with a strange tone in her voice. "Where is Caroline?" Eleanor asked, her voice cutting through the quiet. The silence that followed said everything. Eleanor stood up slowly. She was a small woman, but something about her presence filled the room. "I see," she ran. Maya's mother started to make excuses. "She's just in shock. She's scared she'll come back when she won't." Eleanor's voice was firm. "I knew from the start what she wanted. I just hoped I was wrong." She looked at each of them. "My grandson is lying here fighting for his life, and the woman who claimed to love him couldn't even stay one night." The words hung heavy in the air. Maya wanted to defend her sister, but what could she say? Caroline had left. That was a fact no amount of excuses could change. Eleanor turned to Maya. "You're the younger sister." "Maya, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am. Ethan mentioned you. Said you were a teacher. Said you actually cared about things that mattered." Eleanor studied her face for a long moment. "Come with me. We need to talk." They went to a small private room down the hall. Eleanor closed the door and gestured for Maya to sit. "I'm going to tell you something that very few people know. My grandson isn't just a businessman. He's the sole heir to Chen Industries. The company is worth over $500 million. Maya's mind went blank for a second. 500 million. She'd known Ethan came from money, but this? Caroline had never mentioned this. Had she even known? "We kept it quiet," Eleanor continued. "Ethan wanted to be valued for who he was, not what he had. He watched too many friends get used by people who only saw dollar signs." She paused, her eyes sad. "I think your sister found out somehow. About 6 months ago, she changed. Started asking about family businesses, future plans, assets." Maya felt sick. She wanted to say Eleanor was wrong, but pieces were falling into place. Caroline's sudden interest in the wedding being perfect. The way she'd started talking about what kind of house they'd live in, what kind of life they'd have. Maya had thought she was just excited about getting married. "Why are you telling me this?" Maya asked. "Because I need your help." Eleanor sat down across from her. "Ethan needs a specific treatment. It's experimental. Very expensive and very promising. But there's a problem. Years ago, when my late husband set up the family trust, he included a clause. He'd seen too many family fortunes torn apart by unmarried heirs dying young and relatives fighting over money. So he made a rule. To access certain emergency funds, the heir must be married. He thought it would ensure someone who truly cared about his grandchildren would be there to make medical decisions. Maya's head was spinning. But Ethan's not married. Exactly. Eleanor leaned forward. Here's what I'm asking, and I know how it sounds. I know how crazy this is, but I'm asking you to marry my grandson. The room felt like it was spinning. What? A legal marriage? Today, tomorrow, as soon as possible. With Ethan in a coma, yes. I know it sounds insane. I know it's not normal. But it would make you his legal wife, which means you can authorize the treatment. You can access the funds. You can save his life. Maya stood up, her hands shaking. You're asking me to marry a man who's unconscious. A man I barely know. A man who was supposed to marry my sister. I'm asking you to save a life. Eleanor's voice was steady, and I'm prepared to compensate you for it. $2 million when Ethan recovers. Enough to change your life. Your parents mentioned your father's medical bills before he passed. I know you're still paying those off. I know you worked 2 jobs just to keep up with the debt. Maya felt exposed, vulnerable. Of course, Eleanor had looked into their family. Rich people always did their homework. So you're buying me. I'm offering you a choice. Eleanor's eyes were fierce now. You can walk away, say no. And my grandson might die because of a stupid clause in a trust, or you can help a stranger live. You can make a choice your sister couldn't make. To put someone else first. Maya walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Everything in her said this was wrong, impossible, crazy. You don't marry someone in a coma. You don't marry someone for money. You don't step into your sister's place like this. But another voice whispered, a man is dying. You can help. Isn't that what good people do? She thought about her students, kids from rough neighborhoods who needed someone to believe in them. She thought about her tiny apartment, the bills stacked on her kitchen table, the second job she worked on weekends that left her exhausted. She thought about finally being free of debt, being able to actually live instead of just survive. But mostly, she thought about Ethan, lying in that bed, alone. His fiancé had abandoned him. His life was hanging by a thread. And she could help. Maya turned around. If I do this, when he wakes up, we get it annulled. Right away. I'm not trying to trap anyone or take anything that's not mine. Eleanor nodded. The moment he's well enough, if that's what you both want. And he'll never know it was for money. I don't want him thinking I'm like... She couldn't finish the sentence. Like your sister. Eleanor's voice was soft but honest. Agreed. Maya took a deep breath. This was insane. This was probably the craziest thing she'd ever do. But she was going to do it anyway. Okay, she whispered. I'll marry him. 3 days later, Maya stood in a hospital room wearing a simple white dress her mother had bought that morning. The dress still had the tags on it an hour ago. Everything about this felt surreal, like she was watching someone else's life happen. A judge stood at the foot of the bed where Ethan lay, still unconscious, still connected to all those machines that beeped and hummed. 2 nurses served as witnesses, both of them looking uncomfortable but trying to be professional. Eleanor held a small bouquet of white roses, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall. Maya's hands were shaking as she signed the papers. Her signature looked strange, unfamiliar. In that moment, with the stroke of a pen, she became someone's wife. Someone she'd met exactly twice before all this happened. The judge pronounced them married, and it was done. Maya Chen, that was her name now. It felt like wearing someone else's clothes. After everyone left, Maya sat alone beside Ethan's bed. She looked at the gold band on her finger, then at the matching one the nurse had carefully placed on Ethan's hand. I'm sorry, she whispered to him. I know this isn't what you wanted, but I promise I'm trying to help. The next morning, Eleanor insisted Maya move into the Chen family mansion. You're his wife now, Eleanor said firmly. People will talk if you don't, and the medical team needs you close by in case there are decisions to make. The mansion was overwhelming. Maya had grown up in a small 3-bedroom house where you could hear everything happening in every room. This place had wings, actual wings like in movies. Her bedroom alone was bigger than her entire apartment. A housekeeper named Ruth showed her around. Pointing out rooms Maya was sure she'd get lost trying to find again. The library, the sitting room, the breakfast room that was different from the dining room. It was too much. Mr. Chen's study is down this hall, Ruth said, stopping at a heavy wooden door. Mrs. Eleanor said you should have access to everything. The medical team might need documents, insurance papers, that sort of thing. Maya nodded, but she felt like an intruder. This was Ethan's private space, his life. And here she was, a stranger with a legal right to rifle through it. That evening, alone in the study, Maya started looking through filing cabinets for the medical documents the hospital needed. That's when she found the journals. They were in a locked drawer, but Eleanor had given her all the keys. 5 leather-bound notebooks dated over the last 3 years. She knew she shouldn't read them. They were private, personal. But she opened the first one anyway, telling herself she just needed to understand who this man was. The man she'd married, the man whose life was now tangled up with hers. The first entries were simple. Work meetings, business deals, thoughts about company strategy. But then the tone changed. Ethan wrote about feeling trapped, about people who smiled at him but only saw his bank account. He wrote about his father's death when he was 19, about the weight of expectations, about building walls just to figure out who was real. Sometimes I think about just walking away from it all. One entry read, "Getting a normal job in a normal place where nobody knows my last name." Would anyone love me then? Would anyone even notice me? Maya felt something crack in her chest. This wasn't the confident businessman she'd seen at family dinners. This was someone lonely, someone struggling with the same questions everyone did, just with more zeros in his bank account. She kept reading, unable to stop. He wrote about his relationship with Caroline. The early days sounded happy. She's beautiful and confident. She makes me feel like maybe I can be normal. But then, slowly, things changed. Caroline asked about my portfolio today, 3rd time this week. She says she's just interested in my work, but something feels off. She wanted me to put her name on the deed to the lake house, as a show of commitment, she said. Eleanor warned me not to. I hate that I'm suspicious, but I can't shake this feeling. Then Maya found the entry from 2 months ago, dated the night of that family dinner. Her hands trembled as she read it. Had dinner with Caroline's family tonight. Her sister Maya was there. I'd only met her once before, briefly. She's a teacher, works with kids in tough neighborhoods. Caroline spent the whole dinner on her phone, talking about the wedding venue, barely looking up. But Maya talked about her students like they hung the moon. She told the story about a kid who'd been failing everything, how she stayed after school with him for months and he just got accepted to college. The way her whole face lit up when she talked about it. That's real. That's someone who cares about something bigger than themselves. I wish I had that kind of passion for anything. I wish I knew if Caroline loves me or loves the idea of what our life could be. I don't even know anymore. Maya closed the journal, her heart pounding. He'd noticed her, really noticed her, and he'd been having doubts about Caroline even before the accident. She felt guilty for feeling anything about that. This was her sister, but the evidence was right there in his own handwriting. Caroline had been pulling away, becoming someone else, or maybe showing who she really was. Over the next few days, Maya fell into a strange routine. Mornings at the hospital, sitting beside Ethan's bed talking to him the way the nurses said she should. She'd tell him about her day, about the students she missed, about the book she was reading. Afternoons were spent handling paperwork, dealing with insurance companies, making decisions about his care. Evenings, she'd return to the study and read more of his journals. She learned that he'd donated millions to charity, anonymously. That he wrote poetry, terrible poetry that made her smile. That he loved old movies and terrible puns. That he'd wanted to be a teacher once before family obligations took over. One afternoon, while organizing papers for the accountant, Maya found a folder labeled Personal Correspondence. Inside were printed emails. Most were business-related, but then she saw Caroline's name. Her stomach dropped. The emails were between Caroline and someone named Brett. They went back 8 months. At first they seemed innocent enough, old friends catching up. But then the tone changed. They were meeting in secret, making plans, and Caroline was asking Brett to help her research Ethan's financial situation. "Once we're married, I'll have access," Caroline had written. "We just need to be patient. Play it right and we'll both be set." Maya felt sick. She wanted to throw the papers away, pretend she never saw them. But she couldn't unsee it. Her sister had been planning this, using Ethan, and Brett, whoever he was in on it. That evening, Maya sat beside Ethan's hospital bed looking at his bruised face. "Your grandmother was right about her," she said softly. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have seen it, but I didn't." She took his hand, careful of the IV line. "The nurses say you might be able to hear me. I don't know if that's true, but if you can, I want you to know something. I read your journals. I know that's probably wrong, but I needed to understand who you are, and you're not what I expected. You're kind. You're thoughtful. You care about things that matter, and you deserve so much better than what happened to you." Maya wiped her eyes. "When you wake up, we'll figure this all out. I'll sign whatever papers you want. I'll get out of your life. But right now I'm here, and I'm going to make sure you get the treatment you need. That's a promise." She stayed for another hour just sitting there in the quiet. The machines beeped steadily, a rhythm she'd gotten used to. Outside the window, the city lights started coming on as evening fell. Before leaving, Maya did something she'd been doing every night. She read to him. Tonight it was poetry, some of the same poets he'd mentioned loving in his journals. Her voice was soft in the quiet room, just her words and the sound of the machines keeping him alive. When she got back to the mansion, Ruth was waiting. "Mrs. Chen, there's someone here to see you. A young woman. She says she's Mr. Chen's fiancé." Maya's blood went cold. Caroline was back. Her sister was in the sitting room, looking exactly like she always did. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, designer clothes. She smiled when Maya walked in, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hey sis," Caroline said like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't abandoned everyone. "We need to talk about this little situation you've gotten yourself into." Maya stood in the doorway, exhausted, angry, and suddenly very sure of one thing. She wasn't going to let Caroline hurt Ethan again. Whatever game her sister was playing, it ended now. "You left," Maya said, her voice steady. "You ran away when he needed you most. You don't get to walk back in and call it a situation." Caroline's smile faded. "You don't know what you're dealing with here. This is more complicated than you think." "Then explain it." Maya crossed her arms. "Explain why you were emailing Brett about Ethan's money. Explain why you left him in a coma. Explain any of it." Caroline's face went pale. "You went through his things? I'm his wife. Legally, you made sure I had to be when you left." Maya felt stronger than she had in days. "So yes, I went through his things. And I found everything." The room went silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Caroline stared at her and Maya stared back, refusing to look away first. Finally, Caroline laughed, but it sounded harsh. "You have no idea what you've walked into, Maya. No idea at all." "Then tell me." But Caroline just grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "This isn't over," she said. "Not even close." After she left, Maya sank into a chair, her hands shaking again. Ruth appeared with tea, her face kind. "You did good standing up to her," Ruth said quietly. "Mr. Chen is lucky to have someone fighting for him." Maya looked down at her wedding ring. Was that what she was doing? Fighting for him? A man she barely knew, whose life she'd accidentally become part of. But as she sat there, she realized something. Maybe she didn't know Ethan well, but she knew his heart, his thoughts, his dreams. She'd spent days reading his words, understanding his struggles. In some strange way, she knew him better than most people ever would, and she wasn't going to let anyone hurt him. Not Caroline, not Brett, not anyone. Whatever came next, she was ready. 6 weeks after the wedding, Maya was reading poetry to Ethan like she did every afternoon. She'd just finished a poem by Robert Frost when she felt it, a slight pressure against her hand. So small she thought she'd imagined it. Then his finger moved again. Maya's heart stopped. She looked at his face, searching for any sign of change. His eyelids fluttered just barely. "Ethan?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "Can you hear me?" She pressed the call button frantically. Within seconds, nurses rushed in, followed by the doctor. Maya was pushed back as they swarmed around him, checking monitors, shining lights in his eyes, calling his name. "Mr. Chen, can you hear us? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." Maya watched from the corner, her hands pressed against her mouth. After 42 days of stillness, he was moving. He was responding. He was coming back. Over the next 3 days, Ethan slowly surfaced. It wasn't like the movies where someone just opens their eyes and sits up. It was gradual, confusing. He'd be awake for a few minutes, then drift off again. He'd try to speak, but the words wouldn't come. His eyes would open, but they looked lost, unfocused. Maya was there for all of it. When he was scared, when he was frustrated, when he didn't understand where he was or what had happened. She held his hand and told him he was safe, that everything would be okay, even when she wasn't sure it would be. On the fourth day, Ethan was awake for almost an hour. The doctor came in to assess him, asking questions. Did he know his name? Yes. Did he know where he was? A hospital, he managed to say, his voice rough from weeks of not using it. Did he remember what happened? Ethan's face scrunched up, trying to remember. Car, he said finally. Something about a car. But it's all foggy. The doctor nodded. You were in an accident. You've been in a coma for 6 weeks. Some memory loss is normal. Don't push yourself to remember. It'll come back gradually. After the doctor left, Ethan looked around the room, his eyes finally landing on Maya. He stared at her for a long moment, and she could see him trying to place her, searching his fractured memory. I know you, he said slowly. Don't I? Maya's throat tightened. Yes, I'm Maya. He nodded slightly, like the name meant something, but he couldn't quite grasp what. His eyes drifted down to his left hand, to the gold band on his finger. He stared at it, confused. Then he looked at Maya's hand, at her matching ring. Are we... He couldn't finish the sentence, exhaustion pulling at him. Rest, Maya said gently. We can talk more when you're stronger. But that night, Eleanor pulled Maya aside in the hallway. He's going to ask questions. The doctor says his memory is scattered. He remembers fragments, but not the full picture. He doesn't remember Caroline clearly. Maya had been dreading this conversation. What do we tell him? Eleanor was quiet for a moment. The doctor warned that shocking him right now could be harmful. Learning that his fiancé abandoned him, that he's been unconscious for weeks, that he married someone he barely knows. It's too much for his brain to handle while it's still healing. So we lie to him? We protect him, Eleanor corrected. Just until he's stronger. Until his memory starts coming back naturally. She looked at Maya. If he asks if you're his wife, we tell him yes. Because legally you are. We let him believe it was real, that it happened before the accident. We give him stability while he heals. Maya felt sick. Eleanor, I can't. When he finds out, he'll be strong enough to handle it. Right now he's not. Eleanor's voice was firm but not unkind. I know this is difficult, but would you rather tell him the truth and risk his recovery? Or would you rather give him something solid to hold on to while his world is falling apart? Maya didn't sleep that night. She lay in her room at the mansion, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what Eleanor had said. It was a lie. A huge, complicated lie. But Eleanor was right about one thing. Ethan needed stability. He needed something familiar in a world that must feel completely foreign to him. The next morning, Ethan was more alert. The breathing tube had been removed, and though his voice was still weak, he could speak more clearly. Maya walked into his room and found him staring out the window. Hey, she said softly. He turned to look at her, and this time there was recognition in his eyes. Not full recognition, but something. Maya, he said. That's your name? Maya. That's right. She sat in the chair beside his bed. I keep having these flashes, he said slowly. Like pieces of a puzzle. I remember your voice. You were reading to me. Poetry. Maya's eyes welled up. You heard me. I think so. It's all jumbled up. Like a dream I can't quite remember. He looked down at his wedding ring again. But this is real. We're married, aren't we? The moment stretched out. Maya could feel her heart pounding. This was it. The moment where she either told the truth or committed to the lie. She thought about his journals, about how lonely he'd been, how people had used him. She thought about Caroline and Brett, about the plot that had almost worked. She thought about Ethan lying here alone because the woman he'd trusted had run away. Yes, she said quietly. We're married. Ethan closed his eyes and she saw relief wash over his face. Okay, that's good. I was worried I was imagining it. He opened his eyes again. I'm sorry I don't remember more. I feel like I should remember our wedding, remember everything. But it's like trying to see through fog. Don't apologize. The doctor said your memory will come back. We just need to be patient. Maya reached for his hand. What matters is you're awake. You're here. He squeezed her hand weakly. Thank you for staying. For being here. I can feel it, you know. Even with the gaps in my memory, I can feel that you've been here the whole time. Maya had to look away so he wouldn't see her crying. Because he was right. She had been there. Every single day. Not because she was his wife, but because somewhere along the way, sitting in this room, reading his journals, learning who he really was, she'd started to care. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan grew stronger. Physical therapy was hard, frustrating work. His body had lost muscle and simple tasks exhausted him. But he pushed through it, determined. And Maya was there for all of it, encouraging him, celebrating small victories, holding him up when he felt like giving up. They talked for hours. About his company, about her students, about books and movies and stupid things that made them laugh. Ethan still couldn't remember large chunks of his life, but new memories were forming. Every day with Maya was clear, real. And somewhere in those conversations, something shifted between them. Maya would catch herself looking forward to seeing him, missing him when she wasn't at the hospital. The way he smiled when she walked into his room made her heart do strange things, and the way he looked at her, like she was the most important person in his world, made her feel guilty and happy and confused all at once. One afternoon, during physical therapy, Ethan was working on walking with support bars. It was painful, frustrating. He'd made it halfway across the room when his legs gave out. Maya caught him before he fell. "I've got you," she said, taking his weight. Ethan looked at her, their faces close. "You always do," he said softly. And then, surprising them both, he kissed her. It was brief, gentle. When he pulled back, he looked uncertain. "I'm sorry. I don't even know if that's something we—" "It's okay," Maya whispered, her heart racing. It's okay, but it wasn't okay. Because every day the lie grew bigger. Every smile, every conversation, every moment they connected made the truth harder to tell. She was falling for him, actually falling for him, and he was falling for a version of their story that didn't exist. That night, Caroline showed up at the mansion again. Maya found her in the entrance hall arguing with Ruth. "I have a right to see him," Caroline was saying. "He was my fiancé." "You left him," Maya said, coming down the stairs. "You don't get to just show up now." Caroline spun around. "He's awake, I heard. And I want to see him." "No. You can't keep me from him, Maya. I'll tell him everything. The arrangement, the money, all of it." Maya walked right up to her sister. "You do that and I'll show him the emails. The ones between you and Brett. The ones where you planned to use him, where you talked about his money like it was already yours." Caroline's face went pale. "You wouldn't. Try me." Maya's voice was steady, stronger than she felt. "He's recovering. He doesn't need you coming in and making things worse. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to stay away. And maybe when he's fully recovered, he can decide if he wants to hear from you. But right now he needs peace." For a moment, she thought Caroline would fight. But then her sister just laughed bitterly. "You're actually falling for him, aren't you? Poor Maya. You have no idea what you're setting yourself up for. Get out, Caroline." After she left, Maya sat on the stairs, shaking. Ruth brought her tea, her expression sympathetic. "You're protecting him," Ruth said gently. That's what matters, but Maya wasn't sure anymore. Was she protecting him? Or was she being just as dishonest as Caroline, just in a different way? She was lying to him every day, letting him believe in something that wasn't real, letting him fall for her under false pretenses. That night, Maya stood outside Ethan's hospital room, watching him through the window. He was reading, looking more like himself every day. Strong, alert, alive. She'd helped save him. The experimental treatment had worked. He was going to be okay. But what happened when his memory came back fully? When he remembered Caroline, remembered the doubts he'd had? When he realized that the woman he'd been falling for had married him while he was unconscious, for money? Eleanor appeared beside her. Having second thoughts? "I don't know what I'm having," Maya admitted. "I thought this would be simple. Save him, get the annulment, move on. But it's not simple." "It's so not simple. You care about him, it wasn't a question." Maya nodded anyway. "Which is exactly why I should tell him the truth, before this goes any further. And if the shock sets back his recovery?" Maya didn't have an answer. She was trapped between protecting him and being honest with him, between what her heart wanted and what her head knew was right. Inside the room, Ethan looked up and saw her through the window. His whole face lit up and he waved for her to come in. That smile, that genuine, happy smile that made her feel like maybe, possibly, this complicated mess might somehow work out. Maya took a deep breath and walked in. carrying the weight of all her secrets with her. 3 weeks later, Ethan was finally strong enough to leave the hospital. The doctors were amazed at his recovery. The experimental treatment had worked better than anyone expected, and his determination to get better had done the rest. He still had gaps in his memory, but more came back every day. Maya helped him into the car, and Ruth drove them back to the mansion. Ethan stared out the window the whole way, taking in the city like he was seeing it for the first time. In a way he was. It's strange, he said quietly. I remember this place. The buildings, the streets. But it feels different somehow, like I'm remembering someone else's life. Maya's stomach twisted. Every day it got harder to keep up the pretense. Every time he looked at her with trust in his eyes, every time he reached for her hand, every time he said her name with such warmth, the guilt grew heavier. When they got to the mansion, Ethan stood in the entrance hall looking around. I know this place, he said, his voice uncertain. But I don't remember living here. With you, I mean. Shouldn't I remember that? The doctor said some memories take longer, Maya said, which was true. It just wasn't the whole truth. You're still healing. That night, Eleanor arranged a small welcome home dinner. Just the three of them. Ethan seemed tired, overwhelmed. He kept touching things like he was trying to trigger memories. A picture frame, the banister, the back of his chair, searching for something familiar. After dinner, he said he wanted to go to his study. I need to see my things, he explained. Maybe it'll help. Maya's blood went cold. His study, where his journals were, where all the evidence of his real life, his real thoughts, his doubts about Caroline, existed in his own handwriting. Maybe you should rest first, Maya suggested, trying to keep her voice calm. You've had a long day. I need to do this. There was determination in his voice. I need to remember who I was before the accident. Maya followed him to the study, her heart pounding. She watched as he moved around the room, opening drawers, looking at papers. He found a photo of himself with his parents, stood there staring at it for a long time. I remember this day, he said softly. Dad was still alive. I was 16. Then he noticed the locked drawer. What's in here? I don't know, Maya lied. I never opened it, but Ethan found the key in the desk. His hands trembled slightly as he unlocked it. Inside were his journals, 5 of them, leather-bound, full of his private thoughts. He pulled one out, opened it to a random page. Maya watched his face as he read his own words. She could see him processing, recognizing his handwriting, trying to match what he was reading with the fragments in his mind. These are mine, he said, more to himself than to her. My journals. He flipped through pages, stopping here and there. Then he found an entry that made him freeze. His face changed. This is dated 3 months ago, he said slowly. It talks about Caroline. My fiancée, Caroline. He looked up at Maya, confusion and something else in his eyes. But you're my wife. So when did I marry you? It must have been recent, right before the accident? Maya couldn't speak. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading. Ethan kept reading, flipping through pages. He found the entry about the family dinner. The one where he'd written about Maya, about wishing Caroline had her authenticity. His eyes scanned the words, and she could see him trying to piece it together. I wrote about you, he said, his voice strange, before the accident. But in this, you're not my wife. You're Caroline's sister, someone I barely knew. He looked at her. What's going on, Maya? Ethan, let me explain. How long? His voice was harder now. How long was I with Caroline before the accident? 2 years. You were supposed to get married in 3 months. The journal fell from his hands. 2 years. And I don't remember any of it clearly. Just fragments. But I remember you. Every day since I woke up, I remember you. He stood up, and she could see he was shaking. Nothing about this makes sense. If I was with Caroline for 2 years, engaged to her, why don't I remember her face clearly? Why do I only feel something when I look at you? Maya felt tears streaming down her face. Because your memory isn't fully back yet. Because the last few weeks are clearer than everything before the accident. That's normal with head trauma. Then tell me the truth. He stepped closer to her. All of it. Right now. What aren't you telling me? The words stuck in her throat. She looked at this man she'd spent weeks caring for, weeks falling for, and she couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't keep lying. Caroline left, Maya said, her voice breaking. The night of your accident. You were in a coma, and she got scared and she left. Just packed up and disappeared. Ethan stared at her. She left me? Yes. And you? Why are you here? Why are you wearing that ring? Maya took a shaky breath. Your grandmother asked me to help. There was a clause in the family trust. You needed to be married to access the emergency funds for your treatment. She couldn't finish. You married me while I was in a coma. His voice was flat, emotionless, yes. For money. For $2 million. The words felt like glass in her mouth. And to save your life. The treatment you needed, it was expensive, experimental. Without it, you might have died. Ethan turned away from her. He walked to the window, his back rigid. The silence stretched out, suffocating. Maya wanted to say something, anything, but what could she say? She'd lied to him for weeks. Let him fall for her under completely false pretenses. So everything, he finally said, still not looking at her. These last few weeks. You helping me through physical therapy. The conversations, that kiss. All of it was part of the arrangement? No. Maya moved closer but didn't touch him. The arrangement was just the marriage. Everything else, that was real. That was me actually caring about you. How am I supposed to believe that? He spun around and she could see the hurt in his eyes. You've been lying to me since the moment I woke up. Letting me think we had this life together, letting me fall for you, and it was all based on a lie. I know it was wrong. But Eleanor said telling you the truth could hurt your recovery. You were so fragile and I didn't want to make things worse. So you made the choice for me. You decided I couldn't handle the truth. He was right. That's exactly what she'd done. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Ethan. He picked up one of the journals again, flipping to the entry about Caroline. I wrote that I had doubts about her. That I wondered if she loved me or loved what I could give her. He laughed bitterly. Turns out I was right to doubt. She ran the second things got hard, and then you stepped in to take her place. It wasn't like that, wasn't it? He closed the journal carefully. $2 million, Maya, that's life-changing money, especially for someone drowning in debt. Yes, I needed the money. That's true. But that's not why I stayed. Maya was crying openly now. I stayed because I read your journals. I learned who you really are. I sat by your bed for weeks, talking to you, reading to you, hoping you'd wake up. And when you did, watching you fight to get better, seeing your strength, your kindness, the way you never gave up even when therapy hurt and you were exhausted, that's when everything changed. Changed how? I fell in love with you. The words came out as barely a whisper. Not with your money. Not with some arrangement. With you. The real you. The person who writes terrible poetry and donates millions anonymously and worries about being authentic. That's who I fell for. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. She couldn't read his expression. How am I supposed to trust that? How do I know this isn't just more manipulation? To keep the arrangement going. You don't, Maya admitted. You have no reason to trust me. I lied to you. I let you believe something that wasn't true, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. She pulled off her wedding ring, held it out to him. I'll sign whatever papers you want. Annulment, divorce, whatever. I'll give back the money. I haven't touched it anyway. I just want you to know that what I felt, what I feel, that was never fake. Ethan didn't take the ring. He just stood there looking exhausted and hurt and lost. I need you to leave, he said quietly. I need to think. I need to figure out what's real and what isn't. Maya nodded, set the ring on his desk. I'll pack my things. Maya. She stopped at the door. Did you mean what you said? About reading to me while I was in the coma? Every word. Every single day, the poetry. Robert Frost, I remember your voice reading it. I thought it was a dream. His voice cracked slightly. That was real? That was real. After she left, Maya went to her room and started packing. She didn't have much. Most of her clothes were still at her apartment. She'd never really moved in, not truly. She'd just been playing a role in someone else's life. Ruth found her 20 minutes later. You told him, he figured it out. Found his journals. Maya zipped up her bag. He wants me gone. I don't blame him. That boy is confused and hurt. Give him time. Time won't change what I did, Ruth. I lied to him. For weeks, you also saved him. You were there when no one else was. That matters. Maya didn't know if it mattered enough. She called a car, grabbed her bag. On her way out, she stopped by Eleanor's room. The older woman looked up from her book. He knows, Maya said simply. Eleanor closed her eyes. How is he? Hurt, angry, I don't blame him. Maya paused at the door. Thank you for giving me the chance to help him. I know that sounds strange after everything, but I mean it. He's alive because of that choice. That's what matters. Where will you go? Back to my apartment. Back to my life. Maya tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. The life I had before all this. But as she rode away from the mansion, watching it disappear in the rearview mirror, Maya knew that was impossible. Nothing would ever be the same. She wasn't the same person who'd gotten that phone call 6 weeks ago. She'd been changed by this, by him, by everything that had happened. She'd married a stranger in a coma to save his life. And somehow, impossibly, she'd fallen in love with him for real. Now she just had to figure out how to live with that. 2 weeks passed. Maya threw herself back into teaching, back into her old life. Her tiny apartment felt even smaller now after the mansion. Her students noticed she seemed different, sadder. She told them she was just tired. The truth was, she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan, wondering if he was okay, if his memory had come back fully, if he hated her. She'd left the money untouched in the account Eleanor had set up. She didn't want it. It felt wrong, tainted by everything that had happened. On a Tuesday afternoon, Maya was grading papers when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Maya? It's Eleanor. Maya's heart jumped. Is Ethan okay? He's fine physically, but I'm calling because you need to see something. Eleanor's voice was tense. Check the news. Any news site. Caroline went to the press. Maya's hands shook as she pulled up a news website on her laptop. The headline made her stomach drop. Millionaire heir's secret coma wedding. Sister steals fiancé's place for $2 million. The article was devastating. Caroline had told everything but twisted it. Made herself the victim. The heartbroken fiancé who stepped away briefly to process the trauma, only to return and find her sister had stolen her place. She painted Maya as a gold digger who'd taken advantage of an unconscious man. There were quotes about manipulation, about trapping Ethan, about the money. The comments section was worse. Thousands of people calling Maya horrible names, saying she should be arrested, that she was evil. Her phone started ringing nonstop. Unknown numbers. Reporters wanting comments. Maya turned off her phone and just sat there numb. This was it. Her life was over. She'd lose her job. Everyone would know. Her name, her face were all over the internet attached to this story. She couldn't hide from this. There was a knock at her door. Maya considered not answering, but the knocking continued, insistent. She finally opened it, expecting a reporter. It was Ethan. He looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping, but he was standing there in her doorway staring at her. Can I come in? Maya stepped aside, too shocked to speak. Ethan walked into her small apartment, looking around. It was nothing like the mansion. One bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, furniture that had seen better days. I saw the news, he said finally. Caroline's interview. I'm sorry, Maya whispered. I never wanted any of this to become public. I never wanted to hurt you. I know. Ethan sat down on her worn couch. I've spent 2 weeks thinking about everything. Reading my journals cover to cover. Talking to Eleanor. Trying to remember. He looked up at her. My memory's mostly back now. Not everything, but enough. I remember Caroline. I remember the doubts I had. I found the emails between her and Brett. Maya sat down in the chair across from him, not trusting herself to sit closer. I should have told you everything from the start. The moment you woke up? Maybe, but I've been thinking about why you didn't. Ethan leaned forward. Eleanor told me the doctors were worried. That you were scared shocking me would hurt my recovery. That you were trying to protect me. That's not an excuse for lying. No, it's not. But it's a reason. And I think I understand it now. He was quiet for a moment. I also read the entries I made after you started visiting me. The ones I don't remember writing clearly, Maya frowned. What do you mean? Apparently, even though I was in a coma, I was somewhat aware sometimes. The doctors call it covert consciousness. There are entries I made after I started waking up before I was fully conscious. I wrote about a voice reading to me, about someone holding my hand, about feeling safe. His eyes met hers. I wrote about you, Maya. Even then, somehow part of me knew you. Tears started falling down Maya's face. I sat there every day. I talked to you about everything. My students' books I was reading, stupid things that happened. I didn't think you could hear. I couldn't, not really. But I felt it. Somewhere deep down I felt that someone cared. Ethan stood up, moved closer. When I woke up and saw you, it felt right. It felt safe. That wasn't because of any lie. That was because you'd been there all along, but the money, You haven't touched it, Eleanor told me. $2 million sitting in an account and you haven't used a penny. He sat on the arm of her chair. That tells me something. If you were really just in this for money, you'd have taken it and run the moment things got complicated. Maya wiped her eyes. I couldn't, it didn't feel earned. I didn't do anything except make everything worse. You saved my life. The treatment I needed, it wouldn't have happened without that marriage. Without you saying yes when you could have said no. Ethan reached out, gently took her hand. You sat by my bed for weeks. You helped me through physical therapy. You were there when no one else was. That matters, Maya. That matters more than the circumstances that brought you there. Caroline says I manipulated you. Caroline is the one who had secret emails about my money, who was planning to use me, who ran away the second things got hard. His voice was firm. I know what manipulation looks like. And I know what genuine care looks like too. I've had enough people in my life who wanted something from me. You're not one of them. How can you know that? Because I read your face when you told me the truth. I saw how much it was killing you to lie to me. Real manipulators don't feel guilty, Maya. They don't cry when they're caught. They don't try to give back the money. He squeezed her hand. And they don't fall in love with the person they're supposedly using. Maya looked up at him. You believe me? That I fell in love with you, I do. Because I fell in love with you too. And I don't think we both imagined what was happening between us. He smiled slightly. Although our story is definitely the weirdest love story I've ever heard of. Despite everything, Maya laughed. You married me while you were unconscious. That's pretty weird. Well, technically, you married me while I was unconscious. I didn't have much choice in the matter. Are you really joking about this? Ethan's expression turned serious. I'm joking because the alternative is being angry. And I don't want to be angry anymore. I'm tired of it. These last 2 weeks without you, I was miserable. I kept thinking about something you said, that what you felt was real, and I realized that what I felt was real too. The circumstances were weird and complicated and messy, but the feelings, those were genuine. So what do we do now? Maya asked. Everyone thinks I'm some kind of criminal. Your reputation is damaged. Caroline's out there telling everyone her version of events. Then I tell them the truth. Ethan stood up. My truth, not Caroline's twisted version. What do you mean? I'm holding a press conference tomorrow. I want you there with me. Maya's eyes went wide. Ethan, no. That'll just make things worse. The media will destroy both of us. Let them try. There was steel in his voice. I'm not hiding. I'm not letting Caroline control this narrative. And I'm not letting you take the fall for something that saved my life. He pulled out his phone, showed her something he'd been working on. I've already written what I'm going to say. I want you to read it. Tell me if I'm missing anything. Maya read through his statement. It was honest, clear. He explained everything. The coma, the trust clause, Caroline's abandonment, the arrangement with Maya, his recovery. But he also talked about what came after, about Maya's dedication, about falling in love, about understanding why she'd made the choices she did. He took responsibility for everything, made it clear that he didn't blame her, that he wanted to move forward together. You don't have to do this, Maya said. You could just get the annulment quietly, move on with your life. You don't owe me anything. I'm not doing this because I owe you. I'm doing this because I want to. Ethan knelt down in front of her chair. These last 2 weeks I remembered everything, including how lonely I was before the accident. How I was going through the motions with Caroline because it seemed like what I should do, not what I wanted to do. And then I woke up and there you were. Someone real, someone genuine, someone who saw me as a person, not a bank account. But the lie was wrong. Yes, I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. But you told me the truth when you could have kept lying. You gave me the ring back. You walked away even though it hurt. That takes courage. That takes integrity. He looked into her eyes. I want to start over. Not as part of some arrangement. Not with any lies between us. Just you and me figuring this out together. If you want that too. Maya's heart was pounding. I want that. More than anything. But what about everyone else? The news, the comments, all of it? Let them talk. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters. Ethan stood, pulled her up with him. But I'm going to set the record straight. Tomorrow. Will you be there with me?